Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving deep into an absolute legend, the only unsolved commercial skyjacking in American history. I am so pumped to unpack this for you because honestly, this case has literally everything. We're talking high stakes tension, a massive nationwide manhunt, and a mystery that still baffles the FBI today. We're going to break down the facts, map out the timeline, and sift through the evidence so you can see exactly how one man defied all the odds and just vanished. So let's get right into it.
I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. Just imagine reading those words. It's the rainy eve of Thanksgiving, 1971. A flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, is just doing her normal job on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 when a passenger hands her a slip of paper. At first, she actually thought he was just a lonely guy slipping her his phone number, so she went to put it in her pocket. But the man leaned in, cool as a cucumber, and whispered that she really ought to look at that note. And man, those chilling words changed aviation history forever. $18.52, paid in cold, hard cash. Back in 1971, that incredibly mundane amount was the cost of a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle. It's wild to think about how different air travel was back then compared to today, right? No TSA lines, no heavy ID checks. You could literally walk right onto a commercial Boeing 727 carrying a briefcase for less than $20. And, well, that's exactly what our mystery man did. The guy who bought that ticket was the picture of a perfectly normal, totally inconspicuous passenger. He bought a seat under the name Dan Cooper, which, by the way, the media totally misreported as D.B. Cooper later on, but the name just stuck. Witnesses recalled a white guy, mid-40s, about 6 feet tall, maybe 170 to 175 pounds. He had olive skin, brown eyes, neatly combed black hair, and he was dressed really sharply but unremarkably. A dark suit, white shirt, black clip-on tie. He sat down in the back of the plane, calmly ordered a bourbon and soda, and lit a cigarette. Totally polite, totally calm, just blending right in. But as you'll see, that calm demeanor was masking a terrifying reality. When Florence, the flight attendant, realized he wasn't kidding about the note, Cooper opened up his battered briefcase just enough to prove he was dead serious. Sitting right there inside were what looked like red dynamite sticks, heavily wired and hooked up directly to a large battery. The flight crew knew instantly this was no hoax. The threat was very real, very deadly, and Cooper, he was now entirely in control of the aircraft. With the threat clearly established, he laid out his demands. He wanted $200,000. Now, to put that into perspective for us today, that is roughly equivalent to $1.5 million. And he was super specific about it, too. He wanted the cash entirely in unmarked $20 bills. He made it absolutely crystal clear to the crew, no funny business, no tricks, or everyone on board goes down. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the cash wasn't his only demand. Cooper didn't just ask for one parachute for a solo getaway. He demanded 4 parachutes, specifically 2 primary civilian chutes and 2 military reserves. Asking for 4 was a brilliant psychological play. I mean, were they for hostages? Was he forcing a crew member to jump with him? Nobody knew. So down on the ground, the FBI and the airline are just scrambling to scrape together the money from Seattle banks and locate these exact parachutes, all while that Boeing 727 is stuck in a holding pattern, just endlessly circling over Puget Sound. Once they landed in Seattle, he traded the 36 passengers for the cash and the parachutes. Then, he ordered the remaining crew to take off again, heading toward Mexico City. But he gave them highly specific, honestly pretty bizarre flight parameters. He wanted the altitude kept under 10,000 feet. Speed, less than 200 knots. Landing gear down. Flaps set at exactly 15 degrees. These settings, flying low and slow with the gear down, that's exactly what you'd need to do if you wanted to safely open the rear door and jump without being ripped to shreds by the wind or passing out from lack of oxygen. It was a huge red flag to authorities that Cooper possessed some serious, calculated intelligence and a really deep understanding of aviation mechanics. This set up an incredibly tight window for his escape. The plane took off from Seattle at 7:40 p.m. By 8 p.m., Cooper does something a 727 was never meant to do mid-flight. He lowers the rear air stairs. And then at exactly 8:24 p.m., the cockpit crew feels a sudden, sharp pressure change and a warning light flashes on the dash. Somewhere out there in the dark, stormy, literally freezing Washington night, likely over the rugged wilderness near Ariel, D.B. Cooper jumped. Strapped with $200,000, he just leaped right into the total unknown. The plane eventually managed to land safely in Reno, Nevada. Authorities immediately swarmed the aircraft, but Cooper was gone. No body, no parachute, just an empty, freezing cabin. This kicked off NORJAC, the FBI's Northwest hijacking investigation, which quickly spiraled into one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Over the first 5 years alone, the FBI chased down more than 800 suspects. Now, the terrain he jumped into was an absolute nightmare. We're talking high winds, freezing temps, dense, unforgiving forests. Most experts at the time concluded there was no way an amateur skydiver could have survived that drop. And yet, massive search parties swept the entire drop zone and found absolutely nothing.
Decades ticked by, and out of all that searching, only 2 major pieces of physical evidence were ever actually recovered. First, that black clip-on tie Cooper left sitting on his seat. Later on, modern analysis of this tie actually found microscopic particles on it, suggesting he might have worked in some sort of aerospace or technical field. They even managed to extract DNA from it, though it's never definitively matched anyone. And the second piece of evidence? 3 decaying bundles of $20 bills, just buried out in the sand. Those bundles totaled exactly $5,880. The story behind finding them is crazy. In February of 1980, so nearly a decade after the hijacking, an 8-year-old kid named Brian Ingram was building a campfire with his family on Tenna Bar, right along the Columbia River. He's digging in the sand and boom, he uncovers these 3 bundles of rotting 20s. The serial numbers were an exact match to the ransom cash. And here's the kicker. It remains the only confirmed recovery of the stolen money to this very day, leaving over $194,000 entirely unaccounted for. Naturally, over the years, the FBI looked closely at hundreds of people, but 2 prime suspects really stand out. First up is Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. He was a Vietnam vet and a skydiver who actually pulled off a weirdly similar skyjacking just 4 months after Cooper. But the FBI ultimately ruled him out because he had strong alibis and didn't really match the physical description, even though some amateur sleuths still swear it was him. Then there's Robert Rackstraw, a former paratrooper and pilot with a criminal record who fit the profile incredibly well, but he always firmly denied having anything to do with it. We're looking at this totally impartially here. The FBI investigated both men exhaustively, but neither was ever definitively proven to be our guy, Dan Cooper. So, with no definitive suspect, we're left with 4 enduring theories. Did he just die on impact out in those freezing woods? Did he somehow escape and live out a quiet, unassuming life? Was he some sort of highly trained operative? Or did he just survive the jump and spend the money super discreetly? In 2016, the FBI officially closed the active investigation to focus on other things, though they did say they're open if credible new physical evidence pops up. But man, the public's fascination is alive and well. Enthusiasts still get together every year at events like CooperCon to obsess over the data, the flight paths, and debate these exact theories. Which brings us to the ultimate lingering question. Look at all the facts we've laid out in this explainer. The incredibly precise flight demands, the calm demeanor under pressure, the missing money, and the complete lack of a body. Based on all the evidence we've just explored, what do you actually think happened? Did the unforgiving Washington wilderness claim him and his secret on that freezing, stormy night? Or did D.B. Cooper somehow pull off the perfect crime? I hope this explainer gave you all the facts you need to build your own theory. Thanks so much for learning with us today, and definitely keep exploring.